Well, hello out there in Viewerland. It is the spring finale of our Parentis 2024 season. So thank you so much for coming. As you know, what you are supposed to be doing right now while we are chatting is saying hello in the comments and telling us where you're watching from. And if you are a writer and parent, let us know. Please, we want to know that you're out there. And we can't know unless you drop your name and where you're from. Well, you don't have to say where you're from, but you have to drop your name. Anyway, say hi to us. We want to say hi. Christina's here.
Hello.
We're very excited about tonight. And while we wait, while we gather, hey, Manish. Oh, I just spoke to him. He's super nice. I like him. Okay. He's all the way in California. Hey. And
hey, Sergio.
Sergio, how you doing? So as we gather, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors, the NEA, and the DeGroat Foundation. You guys are amazing. Thank you for sticking with us for this whole season. You're so good. The Poetry Foundation, thank you guys. Niska, of course, is, Niska. Niska's helping all the time. So hi, Chanel. Thanks for coming. Hey, Sandel. It's good to see you. And Ryan, I'm so glad you guys are out there. Thanks for saying hi. So let me tell you a little bit about what we have done in 2024. So as you know, we have 3 programs, not just this one, but we are a nonprofit. Parentis helps writers stay creative after they have kids. So if you are a writer who has kids and you're having some troubles finishing a big project, hello, we are your friends. So what we have done in spring of 2024, we presented 5 salons. We presented our poetry salon, Inheritance, Search for Meaning, The Human Condition, and of course, this season closer, which is super, super exciting. We had our annual fellowship, which is now closed, and we're getting ready to judge it this summer. It's very exciting. We got a lot of people submitting. Our last year's winner now has a book contract that was based on the short thing that she wrote for us. The under 600 word flash fiction that she wrote for us is now a book and under contract. So that is a big win for us and for her. And we're very, very excited for Taylor Hobbs.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Yay! Me too! And then, of course, there's the fellowship. We have the salons. And then, of course, we have the cycle of support. Now, here is where we actually shine. As you all probably already know, you can sign up to be a sustaining member of Parentis. It starts at $10 a month, and then it goes up to as much as you can pay. And actually, it stopped at $20 a month, so it's not that expensive. But we really appreciate your support, and in return, you can join one of our little tiny meetups, which are small groups of very intimate. They're like friends. You like friends? They are friends. They're colleagues. They're everything. They're small groups of writers who are parents. You meet once a week on a Zoom, and everybody supports each other. And in 2024, we had some of these, I'm just going to name off some of the wins of some of our title members. Betsy Golden Callum got an agent and a publisher for her book. Kristen Vukovic wrote her entire book, and it is coming out in August. It's Cheesemaker's Daughter, and it's going to be huge, and you should see it right now as we speak. She's doing a cool launch in New York City with a cheese fortune teller that I wish that I could have gone to see. Jessica Manick won first chapbook prize for her poetry collection. The Sheila Nageg editions gave her first prize. Shara Toomley published flash nonfiction in Plowshares. Lisa Goldie became a literary agent. So that's a pretty fun group to be in. Then Isabel Choi won the NEA Creative Writing Grant. Jana Lee Germain published a whole bunch of poetry, won a bunch of prizes. Laura Wheatman Hill published a bunch of essays. Of course, our past fellows are still doing great work. Elizabeth Pagel-Hogan has a new book out this year. A bunch of people who read for us have books out. Sarah Kane Gutowski has a new book called The Familiar, which is poetry, which is fantastic. Marcia LeBeau has her first chapbook out called A Curious Hunger. All of these people, of course, Sergio, who's out in the audience. Hi, Sergio. His anthology was published in 2024, an anthology of Mexican-American writers. Jennifer Egan has a new book out. She doesn't have a new book out, but her 2 books have been translated into Spanish, both Goon Squad and Candy House. And Jennifer Probst, it's her publication date today. So she has a new romance novel out. And basically, on the whole, In 2024, Parentis authors have published 70, count them, 70 new novels so far. So we don't suck, and you should join us. Because then you too could be this famous. Okay, so speaking of famous, tell us who is reading for us today, Christina.
Well, we really have such an amazing lineup tonight. I'm so excited to introduce them. We have Sarah Langan. She's the author of 4 novels, The Keeper, The Missing, Audrey's Door, and the critically acclaimed novel Good Neighbors.
And
we also have Emily Raboteau. Her books are Lessons for Survival, Searching for Zion, and the critically acclaimed novel, The Professor's Daughter. So excited. Oh my God. And finally, our first reader tonight will be Matthew Lawrence Garcia. Matthew holds an MA in Literature and Translation from University College of London and was a Fulbright Scholar in Spain and received support from the Napa Valley Writers Conference and Kenyon Review Writers Workshop. His work has most recently been published or is forthcoming in American Short Fiction, Gulf Coast, Copper Nickel, and Santa Monica Review, and received the second place prize for ASF's Halifax Ranch competition. He has a literature podcast called Doggerel Diaries, and his website is MatthewLawrenceGarcia.com. He lives in Germany, and he's there now with his wife and 2 children. Everyone, hello, and welcome, Matthew, to read for us.
Yay!
So excited.
Willkommen.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a funny story. I'm actually in a hotel in a different city in Germany than the one I live in. So I'm in Hamburg right now for work purposes, and it's late, but I drank some coffee and I'm ready to go.
Go coffee.
Cool. So I will read a story that is in the interconnected collection of short stories that I'm reaching the finish line on. This particular piece was in Copper Nickel. 1 or 2 caveats and a little bit of backstory. There will be a few Spanish words that aren't translated directly because it's in the voice of one of the characters, and this is his natural speech patterns. And this particular piece takes place in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the year 1997, around a very famous cultural event, which was the Romero versus Tapia boxing match. It had a lot of significance for the Mexican-American community there. So this story is called Romero versus Tapia, 97. And here we go. When I was 15, my best friend C and I got seriously into boxing. That summer, there was a buzz around the scene in Albuquerque that felt different from the usual jive of boys wanting to get rich and drive lush lowriders and SUVs, or the old men standing around the bodega chatting up this and that boxeador. It was a shift in the atmosphere that had at its source the fact that our forgotten, nowhere town had not 1 but 2 nationally ranked title contenders, Danny Romero and Johnny Tapia, guys with bad blood between them who boxed in the same weight class. Word was they were finally going to fight that July. My father worked at a local grocery, and one afternoon, while C and I were bumming around the video rentals section, Johnny Tapia himself came walking in. He was a real devil from the South Valley who disappeared for a while after getting banned for cocaine use, which was normal enough in our city, but he'd been boxing again for a couple of years and building a big reputation. Suffice it to say, when he walked past us, we were completely flashed. Of course, we'd seen pictures of him in magazines, but I'd never seen someone famous in real life. He wore joggers and a gray tank top and had a Virgin Mary tattoo on his chest with Mary's hands and the crown of her head poking up at his neck. He was smaller than I had imagined, with a smooth cropped head and open brown eyes, but he seemed powerful, wild. C pinched me as Tapia disappeared around the corner, only to return a minute later holding 6 thick steaks to his chest, pausing to scan the shelves at the end of our aisle. My father was walking toward us in his red apron. his dark hair combed back. That vato destroyed a whole display a few weeks back, completely drunk. He stood there akimbo. If he can't behave, I'm calling security. He was being too loud, baiting Tapia, and I was afraid the boxer would come drop him. My dad was strong, with cut-ass arms from all those morning push-ups, but he stood no chance. He isn't doing anything, I said. Go home, my father said. He rubbed a hand across his mustache and chin. There's nothing to see here. I never talked back to my father, but I couldn't help myself. You don't know what you're talking about. My father grabbed my upper arm. You do not speak that way to me, carajo. Tapia must have overheard us as he came around the aisle carrying his steaks and a gallon of vodka, his chest puffed and chin jutted, full of menace. My father stared at him hard, but when Tapia got close, he merely grinned, patted my father on the shoulder and winked. Evening mass, he said, moving toward the checkout. Gotta go. My father looked after him, scoffing with contempt, but C and I were spellbound. Most people around town would be rooting for Pretty Boy Romero in the upcoming fight, especially the girls. But in that moment, I knew I would be a Tapia fan. And that's where I'll stop the story for now.
Thank you. Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
So, you know how you mentioned that this was like a really important Mexican American event. Like when you workshopped this, I'm assuming you workshopped it somewhere. Maybe you haven't. But what was that line about? Like, did people know, and did they research, to understand the full meaning of what this was about before they read, like when they read it, or did you have to explain it, or like what is your feeling on that? Because I used to always get people who would ask me to explain in the work what certain events were, if it was related to something Chinese American or something Chinese,
sure.
And so it's a question that's always like in the air for me. So I was just wondering, how do you handle that?
It is a pretty interesting question, because if you approach culturally ingrained events or things that happen sort of off the cultural radar of New York or something like this, if you're using a second language in the text, and the way that it appears on the page is I don't use italics or anything like that when I use a foreign word. It's part of the speech.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, I get it.
So I think that in and of itself is an assumption that you're asking the reader to go with what you're doing, and if they don't understand it, then they need to sort of look it up themselves. It's not maybe it's a choice. You're not like othering the events and the text.
So you know your reader. So your reader's going to look it up if they don't know it.
That's what you hope. Yeah, I mean, and so this one, I had the chance of actually working with a wonderful Chinese American writer, Lan Samantha Chang.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, she read this.
She's fantastic, and she was one of the late readers on this, and I got a lot of good feedback from her. Something that I tweaked toward the end that I think made a lot of difference, and was a very big advocate of this. You don't necessarily need to go to your reader. You can tell this story, tell it the way that it is for you, with the speech patterns and the events, and sort of try to contagion the reader with the energy and with the color. And if something isn't super clear, they can look it up. I think people do this all the time. I'm reading the book Blackouts by Justin Torres right now.
Oh God, yeah, I just got that.
And it's an amazing book. Certain things are mentioned or dropped that you need to sort of look up if you want to have this deeper engagement with the novel. I also had read some Manuel Puig novels. He's like this 80s Argentine writer who, it just occurred to me halfway through the Blackouts that he was in communication, in commune with his book Kiss of the Spider Woman.
Oh God, I love that book.
And I was just like, like there's so many layers to something that an author does. And if you have a writer or a reader that's like engaged in the work and they don't understand something, I feel like they will want to know what it is. And other times you're just guiding them through that world or through those words in the way you sort of allow things to be made clear without necessarily spelling them out. Like you can do this with language, of course, where you understand through context, but you can also do it with events where you understand through the perspective of the narrator, especially in a first person piece like this, the significance of something. And you have to trust them and believe that when they tell you something is big, and like when they're trying to get you like excited with that energy, that you let yourself be taken with it. So if the writing is good, then I extend or like feel their energy.
Sergio has a question for you that's very New Mexico centric. Red or green?
It's one of the most important and fundamental questions to anybody who's ever lived in New Mexico. Red or green?
And he's frozen and we'll never know.
Isn't there the Christmas option? I always say Christmas, right? It's red and green.
I hope he comes back soon. He will come back. Maybe he'll chat us and tell us whether it's red or green. And
Sarah, do you ever have issues, with material that people may not be familiar with, or Emily, either?
I feel like no. I mean, I have a pretty mainstream experience. Most of the stuff that I'm referencing, so I don't have that as much. And then a lot of the things when I do deep cuts, like people are going to care about them or they're not, like I do a lot of references, and it doesn't matter to me whether people get them.
Yep.
Because I'm a jerk.
But this is I think the mentality that I take as well. I like your straightforward approach to just laying it out there.
Emily?
Yeah, I have that issue with cultural references. And then I guess also in editorial, sometimes it's not merely about cultural references that maybe people outside the culture might not understand and need perhaps a little. There's the question of like how much explaining do I want to do or not, but then also like with the more recent work, it's kind of been about because I've been writing about like climate change, and so it's been about how much science do I have to explain, like how much do people know, how much do they not know at this point. It is similar. It's kind of like, okay, how much do I want to interrupt the narrative by explaining science that probably the majority of the readers of this particular publication get or not, and that's kind of something that I've been working through with editorial.
Does it depend on the magazine or the journal?
Yeah. It depends on who the audience is, right? Like I was surprised. Last year I was reviewing a book for the New York Review of Books, and I was talking about redlining, and they told me I needed to define what that was, which surprised me. I thought that the readership of the New York Review of Books would know what redlining is, but I had to trust the editors that I had to figure out a swift way to explain what it is for people who might not know that.
Well, that's shocking.
Do you tend to err towards explaining or err towards not explaining when you write your first draft before you send it, or like before you send it somewhere? Like, do you tend to define things?
For me, probably not explaining enough, and then there's always a little tension because I don't want to have to explain. And then some degree of compromise about how to do it. Yeah.
Cool.
Wonderful. Thank you.
More later.
Yeah, more later. Our next reader is Sarah Langan. I'm so lucky she's here. Thank you. As I said, she's an American horror author and 3-time Bram Stoker Award winner. Wow. Langan was also one of the judges for the inaugural Shirley Jackson Award and is currently on its board of directors. She's published 4 novels: The Keeper, The Missing, which was the 2007 Bram Stoker Award winner, Audrey's Door, which was the 2009 Bram Stoker Award winner, and the critically acclaimed novel Good Neighbors, which launched her contemporary upscale fiction career.
And her
I think
most recent
my
novel.
Wikipedia
The most-
page hasn't been updated. This is my
this is
most
like-
recent book.
And
There it is. This is a problem with booking authors in advance. Is that
oh
there's
yeah,
like-
yeah.
like people publish novels and then they come out.
Can you show everyone the book, please?
Oh, sure. This is A Better World. It came out April 9th.
Yay! Everyone, we have links. We're going to drop them where you can buy them, all these books. So please do.
Yeah, buy them through thebookshop.org.
Support these authors.
It supports indie bookstores, it supports the authors, and it supports us, and we appreciate it. And also, they're really damn good books. You should read them.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
All. That's all I have to
I
say.
can't wait to read this new one. Okay, so Langan's award-winning short stories have been published in Cemetery Dance, Phantom, Chiaroscuro, Brave New Worlds, Darkness on the Edge, and Unspeakable Horror. Her latest novel, A Better World, is making headlines everywhere. We're really thrilled that she's here with us tonight. Everyone, please welcome our next reader, Sarah Langan. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Thank you, guys. This is a dumb question, but how long am I supposed to read for? Like 5 minutes?
17 hours.
17 hours.
Anywhere between 3
Should have
and
worn some
5, something like
diapers.
that.
Yeah.
How much did you say?
Anywhere between 3 and 5.
All right. I will read the opening. So here we go. It's called The Sinking Ship. Some people aren't suited. It's nothing personal, Jack Les said. They're simply a wrong fit. This guy was a clown, the creepy kind. Linda Farmer didn't like him, but she smiled at him because she had to. For instance, Jack said, he enunciated every syllable like a disappointed preschool teacher. Character is paramount. When we hire people who are going to live in our town, mix with our top-level executives, become top-level, we need to know they'll behave. Linda nodded as if to say, we have character, we ooze character. You'll have no cause for concern with us, Linda's husband, Russell, said. They were sitting together on the sunken couch, looking up at Jack Lust in the high wingback chair like a couple of kids who'd been caught doing something bad. Our community is small and like-minded. We prefer collaborative types. It's counterintuitive. To get to this place that you're at today, an interview for a coveted company job in a jewel like Plymouth Valley, you must outshine all your competition, Jack said. His bespoke black suit hugged his bony body like shrink wrap. Linda pegged him at a vim and vigorous 75 years old. Cosmetic surgery, healthy living, clean air, company town people kept it tight. Nobody in their 70s looked this good on the outside. Jack was accompanied by a small entourage of likewise elegant men, none of whom he'd introduced. 2 appeared to be taking notes, and 2 were security, waiting outside the Farmer Bones apartment. Linda hadn't checked, because it all moved too fast, but she suspected that the leather straps across their chests held pregnant holsters. But once you're in Plymouth Valley, you must be a team player, Jack said. His primness, his perfect posture and absence of expression vibed to her like contained rage. This was all a huge leap in logic. It definitely wasn't true. But he reminded Linda of one of those guys you hear about on the news streamies who murder people in weird, excessively neat ways. They lure the random unhoused into their lairs, then exsanguinate and store their blood in jars on their freezer doors. They sneak incrementally larger arsenic doses into a friend's tea over months and years just to watch with secret pleasure as their hair and teeth fall out. But she was thinking this only because she was nervous. This 3-piece suited company shill had a lot of power over her life. Her family needed for Russell to land this job. My God, they needed this job. Your record's the strongest I've seen in a decade. You must have worked night and day to get to this place. Am I correct? Jack asked. Yes, Russell agreed. He was nervous, trying too hard. She didn't blame him. I had days off, but I didn't take them. My inbox was always too full. The next step is to bring you to Plymouth Valley to interview with our science department. This is a rare opportunity. We almost never open our doors to outsiders. Even when we outsource, it's typically through other company towns. I'm so honored, Russell said. It is an honor, but it's an honor you've earned, Jack said. Linda grinned at the compliment despite its smugness. What's it like inside a company town? They're all different. Plymouth Valley's the best, very safe, very happy, Jack answered. His beady eyes connected with hers. He didn't smile. She pictured the shining, bright kitchen in his perfect company townhouse, maybe a severed head or two in the sub-zero freezer. It was a game now, a tension release that made this interview less horribly momentous. If you're lucky, you might see for yourself. If you're even luckier, you might get to stay. The reason I'm here, that I asked to meet you in particular, Linda, is that these hires can get tricky. Relocating and housing entire families is costly for the company, and we avoid it when we can. Totally, Linda said. She waited for him to say something like, but we're glad to have you. The more the merrier. This didn't come, so she elaborated. We're a very happy family. The twins are practically grown. They've never been in trouble. None of us have ever been in trouble. We know that from the background check, Jack agreed. Thank you, she said, flustered. Had she and Russell agreed to a background check? They must have. And I should stop there.
No, you should never stop. Oh my God, this book is so hilarious and wicked.
You're like laughing when you write, right? Like it's like, it reminds me of one of those guys.
I don't know. I just, I think I'm trying to write things like it's kind of how I see the world. Like this is the book and this main character is probably the closest to me. And I think like, it's just my sense of humor. Like everything, every interaction I have, I'm like, what is this guy? You know, like that's just how I am.
There's so much in it that is about being shut out, about being not allowed in, about having to perform to be able to be accepted is really, it's so intense. Like there are parts where you're just like, ow, that's the Mean Girls. Don't be the Mean Girl, you know?
There's a lot of that. And I think as you said that, I think what it's tapping into is like, when I moved to Los Angeles, there's a lot of metaphors for Los Angeles in addition to it's like the premise for this is it's a futuristic town. And this family, it's their last shot. You know, they can't get jobs. Unemployment is at 25%, and the air is dirty. You know, it's global warming is hit, and there's just like algae blooms everywhere. So they know these people are garbage, but they're going to move here. They're going to work for them. They're going to make the world worse because it's a big corporation, because their kids are going to be safe. And so they're really struggling for that. And it's just this choice they make, you know, and I think it's a choice we're all struggling with right now. Like things aren't better, and like we need to start doing something. But as you say, like that exclusion thing, I think it has a lot to do with the frustrations of being a writer, like this constant rejection. And you're like, but what I'm doing is good. This isn't fair. This isn't right.
What do you mean rejection?
Yeah, it's endless. It's so endless. It's just like, you know.
I once was so depressed about all the rejection that I tweeted at Margaret Atwood whether you still get rejected at her fame, and she literally tweeted back at me. She like said, yes, we still get rejected. I'm still rejected every day. Oh
God.
I'm like, that's horrible. There is no escape. But yeah. I mean, you just have to get inured to it and or accept it as part of the business, I guess, and just be like, you know, because when you do get accepted, it's so exciting. And like when a book comes out that's this good, it's really exciting because now people are reading it and talking to you, and like random strangers are probably sending you emails that say like, oh my God, I feel this way, or this was so great.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's great. I love it. It's like I wrote this other story, I don't know, called Squid Teeth that's coming out from Tor Books.
Yeah.
And it's about like, I've just been like, what are the ways that an artist needs to conform in order to get popular support, and like what are the things that have to happen, and what are the, like, are they especially confining for women? And like the story of Squid Teeth is like these artists who can make plates with their mouths, and they have like funny shaped mouths, and like it's insane. And then like some people put squid in their mouths because the squid are better at it. It's crazy. It's a crazy story. But I think about that all the time, you know, because it's such a balancing act of like, you know, it's I don't know. I love working. I love writing. I love stories. There is something when you're working, you're like, who is this for? Should it be for them? Why is this in my head?
I love that line. None of us have ever been in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, it's getting dark. It's going to go bad. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to come back to some more questions.
I'm super excited to get these two ladies talking because they're like the
look
same.
What
It's a Caladrius!
Is that a puffin?
No, it's a Caladrius. Sarah has swag for her book. Sarah, tell us about the swag for your book.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is a super ugly one. So it's a genetically engineered bird that's a meat substitute, like that's cheaper than chicken, that they eat in this town. But they also like over time have come to like venerate it. So I had my daughter Clementine draw a prototype, and then I sent it and had these stuffies made.
Oh my God, that is so funny.
And Sarah is like a long-term friend with my husband, the novelist Victor Laval, who also writes in the horror genre. And when Sarah sent our copy of the book, it came with this crazy bird, which is like so not cute. It's really creepy because its beak looks broken and it has blood coming out of it. And our kids, our boys who are 12 and 13 years old, were fighting over who got to have this bird. And we let the little one have it because the big one always wins. So anyway, I had him bring it up. So show it because I think it's just so terrific and like delightfully weird in the ways that Sarah's writing is delightfully
and your book is
weird.
about birds. I mean, how crazy is that? Your book is about birds and the environment. Like the segue is so smooth. We do this on purpose. Meanwhile, Sergio and Matthew are having this like long conversation in the chat. They're literally talking to each other in the chat. Like Sergio and Matthew are talking about like, do you write in German? Well, yes, I do. Later in the collection, one of the characters moves to Germany. He's a translator. Thanks. I really like to use language as blah, blah, blah. And then like, oh, well, what do you think, red or green? Well, I do Christmas. Like they're like having a whole conversation. Talk amongst yourselves in the chat. It's great. I love it. I mean, that's why we have a chat, so that people can like talk to the authors. Why not do it? Anyway, now we're going to listen to Emily Reed.
Yes. And also you can ask the authors questions. Anyone out there, you know,
yes, you can.
If you have questions, write them in, write them. And
because we actually pay attention to your chat.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Sarah. Our final reader tonight is Emily Raboteau. She writes at the intersection of social environmental justice, race, climate change, and parenthood. Her books are Lessons for Survival, Searching for Zion, which was the winner of an American Book Award and finalist for the Hurston Wright Legacy Award, and the critically acclaimed novel, The Professor's Daughter. Since the release of the 2018 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, she's focused on writing about the climate crisis. A contributing editor at Orion Magazine and a regular contributor to the New York Review of Books, Raboteau's writing has recently appeared and been anthologized in The New Yorker, The New York Times, New York Magazine, The Nation, Best American Science Writing, Best American Travel Writing, and elsewhere. Her distinctions include an inaugural Climate Narratives Prize from the Arizona State University, the Deadline Club Award in featuring reporting from the Society of Professional Journalists, New York chapter, and grants and fellowships from the New York Foundation for the Arts, the Bronx Council on the Arts, the Robert B. Silvers Foundation, the Langan Foundation, and Yaddo. She serves as nonfiction faculty at the Bread Loaf Environmental Writing Conference and is a full professor at the City College of New York and lives in the Bronx with her husband and children. It is our honor to welcome Emily back. It's our third time, but it's my first.
Thanks so much.
Everyone, please welcome Emily.
Yay.
Yeah, so I'm going to read from the new book, which is Lessons for Survival. Yeah, I have a bird on the cover. It's a little less creepy than Sarah's bird.
No, but the rest of the book is like, and the world is falling to pieces. So enjoy your birds, people.
But I'm going to read you a part that's not quite as depressing. Yeah, it's a very New York book. It's a book about that's kind of trying to reckon with how the climate crisis is affecting the city, and I take a lot of walks in the book and walks with other people and try to think through that with other people and how that's going to affect our kids and how it's affecting our kids already. But this section that I'm going to read from toward the beginning is a little bit before all that. It's from a section called Playground Structures. Okay. And I picked this because it's kind of on parenting and having kids. One night before we had children, my husband and I snorted cocaine with a swizzle stick from Starbucks.
Family friendly.
The drug seemed not to be working, and we talked for a few hours about its probably being cut with baby powder. Finally, when sitting still grew impossible, we ventured outside, first to the George Washington Bridge bus station to watch the heroin addicts nodding off, and the hookers getting lippy with their pimps, and the tired travelers with their entire lives packed up in duffel bags. Then, after the bus station shut down, we headed to Bennett Park, where we slid down the twisting slide and mapped out a terrible short story about two writers in a playground in the middle of the night, high on coke. The dilettante's eye view of New York. It's not the recklessness of that memory that surprises me now, but the leisure that we ever had that kind of time to waste, or the freedom and energy to roam. The playground in Bennett Park was fun that night precisely because we weren't meant to be in it. The cops could have booked us for trespassing if they hadn't had real criminals to bust. Now we go to the playground by default when the kids start bouncing off the walls of our 800 square foot apartment. Sometimes it's enchanting to play with our kids in the park. I carry bubbles and sidewalk chalk. I fall in love with my husband all over again when he tells an older kid to scram for picking on our kid for carrying a doll. We chase our son on his scooter. It can feel like a second childhood, but just as often, it's tedious as hell. We are there as a matter of duty to kill a weekend afternoon. I injure my wrists from the repetitive stress of pushing the baby higher, higher, always higher on the swing. The doctor I consult calls it mommy wrist instead of tendinitis. My husband dislikes the helicopter parents at Bennett Park, the gentry of Hudson Heights who intervene when their children grab a toy or push another child, who hover over the rugrats without letting them duke it out on their own, who wear their newborns like accessories. He prefers the playground in J. Hood Wright Park, which resembles the Queens of his childhood. No parents in sight, where the immigrants' kids play pickup soccer, scream like ambulances, splash in puddles, scarf junk food, pick mulberries, and peg each other in the head with water balloons. I see what he means, even when our second child gets knocked over by a 10-year-old on a bike. This playground has a wild energy. The kids are free. J. Hood Wright has a dazzling overlook of the George Washington Bridge from a platform up a steep flight of stairs where old men in hats sit reading El Diario and young men with diamond earrings sit dealing drugs. Every month or so, a film crew arrives to shoot a gritty scene for Law and Order or some other projection of rough New York, retrofitted to look like the rotten apple of 40 years ago, when it was lousy with crack and crime and the population was slumping. Nobody calls New York the rotten apple anymore, except with a kind of nostalgia. More and more, it's referred to as the playground of the rich, and the population is on the rise. The current baby boom among Manhattan's wealthy class is unique among U.S. cities, with the number of children below age 5 having grown over 30% since the turn of the millennium.
Hey, don't you know she won an award? Stop it! Like 15 awards.
Geronimo? What are you doing? All right. You know I'm doing an event? All right, hold on. I'm almost done. My kids are part of this demographic upswing. Their daycare borders J-Hood right, so we spend a lot of time in its playground. Sometimes a director shouts at us to get out of the movie. But this is our life, I want to bark.
Yes, well done. So much fun. I love it. Other people have dogs and cats that walk through, you know?
The interruption seemed almost scripted. It was perfect.
It was
Really?
fantastic.
It was good timing.
Fantastic.
I'm glad
Oh
it
my
was
God.
entertaining.
It was brilliant. Don't worry.
You know what's great? I can't think of another like reading series on Zoom that it would be fine for like a kid to wander by in the background of this one. So
Real
thanks for your
life.
understanding.
It's just real life. What are you gonna do? Like, you know, whatever.
It's perfect comic relief. It's like awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. Listen, I want to go a little heady on everybody because I was reading this interview, Emily, that you did in Orion magazine, and it occurs to me that all three of you, do this. It was a part of the interview in which we're talking about the use of language and code switching in your language. And I noticed, like in this particular essay, for instance, the word lippy and like these almost slang words, right? And like in the interview, the interviewer was talking about how you used umbrage and bugging in the same sentence. And I know in Sarah, in your book, you use like extraordinary vocabulary a lot, like, you know, ignominy, vehemence, exsanguinator. You said that, you know, to exsanguinate, you know, and then, but then you're also like making up words like screenies and you use a lot of like, you know, shitstorm, killjoy, like really kind of comment, you know, like words that people say. And that there's this wonderful, bumping up against each other. And Matthew, in your podcast that you do, you have a literary podcast. Matthew has a literary podcast, everybody. And there's a literary podcast. He does it with a partner, and they talk about stuff that is literary. It's very funny and interesting. And the episode that I'm particularly thinking about is one in which Matthew, I don't know if you coined the term, but you were talking about Endeutzen, to like become more German or to.
Oh yeah, to like bring it in.
Yeah, like to become sort of Germanify something. And but it's great. And German language, I don't speak it well, but I speak it well enough to know that like they are constantly smashing words together and making new words that are even more useful than the old words were separately. And yeah, so anyway, I'm just wondering. And also, my Huang Divorce says, can you drop the link? If you can look up the link and drop the link to your podcast so that people can follow it. Cool.
I'm on.
You know, get on that. And, but like, let's talk. I just want to hear you three human beings who are very good at this talk about your use of language and your choices in language. Like Sarah, yours seems very deliberate that you have like, because you have characters that don't get the words, and that's like part of their shtick is not getting the word, so that it has to get defined on the page so that the character who's probably faking it can understand it. And it's just like it's a very, very clever meta way to define a word that people should know. I kind of love it.
That's a character who just wants to always set people at ease while also running the show. So she pretends to not be as smart as she is. And it's like disarming and people like it, but it's also total BS. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just practice. Like I just try and make things readable, but also I want to use the most efficient words that I can. So I think it's just getting in the groove, you know, getting in it, like what's the language of the character, and they all have their own patois. And so like following that, and then my own voice tends to be very succinct. And I tend to be the person to use the larger words, but then my characters are not.
Cool. And Emily, are yours solid choices, or are they just also part of the writing? Like they just come out that way?
I think for this book, and because I write a lot of long form nonfiction that has a memoir line, but usually also is deeply researched, right? It's kind of like, I think is a sneaky way. It's like a sneaky way for me to talk about serious issues, social and environmental justice issues, for example. Like that piece I just read from is actually an essay about how segregated the school system is in New York City. But I also felt like I don't want to write that as straight journalism. I want to write that as a parent who's, struggling with school choice, and where do those conversations come up where you have some kind of pernicious attitudes like slipping through. The anxiety of parents is in the playgrounds, like when you're pushing your kids on the swing. So like that, there's a larger context there, but I feel like, all right, there's a little bit of strategy there. Like I can kind of trick people into thinking hard about something like the persistence of segregation in schools in this nation by also making them laugh, talking about swizzling, using a swizzle stick to snort coke with my husband before we had kids in the same park where we'd end up having these troubling conversations. But yeah, I mean, I think that's also the way that I talk, right? Like it's got a personal essay kind of feel, but then also there's another register, which is the researched register, which has to do with statistical information, for example, that can feel dry if it's not balanced. So I think that kind of code switching has to do with, like, it's a strategy that has to do with what I want my reader to think about, but also balancing it with, leavening it with a sense of humor and a voice that.
Have any of you had editorial pushback on that kind of mixing? Like, where they're like, no, you need to be more one or the other? Have you had that? I'm just curious.
That's back to like the earlier question about like cultural.
Yeah,
I definitely have, like in some of the publications I've written for, which Christina mentioned when she read my bio. Maybe they wouldn't want me to use the word like folks. Some folks say, right? Mm-hmm. Like they want me to say some people say, and I would say no, like that's a vernacular choice that. In my community, that's how we would say it, and I want it to be my voice, and here's why that choice is important to me to retain. And sometimes the editors will understand if I explain it and let me keep it, and then sometimes not. There's a degree of compromise, like I said before.
Yeah, cool.
I've had an editor on a story try to add in, their translations of like a Spanish phrase that was used. And, kind of like, oh, yeah, my style is like, if you say like, don't close the door in Spanish, then also say it in English, like right after you wrote it in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And you're like, yeah, but isn't that what context is for? And also, isn't that, you don't have to explain it. Like the clever reader knows what's going on. And it's also like, I think, and eventually, like I like Emily, I was like, well, this is a conscious choice. I get that there might be an easier solution for some people, but it was a weighed choice. It wasn't made lightly to do this kind of thing. And part of that weighing is also saying like, will this be harder or possibly not trigger, but like upset somebody or make something about their experience a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus the intent.
But it'll help them grow. That's for sure.
We're all here to educate, right? That's what we do. Sergio would like to know, please tell me, what are some of your tricks to rewrite? How do you separate yourself to reapproach a work as an editor, a rewriter? How do you separate your ego from your work to rewrite it? And go.
I don't know how you separate your ego from anything, but give it a try. But I'd say that the rewrite is probably the most important part of the work. Like the draft is always the draft, and one out of like 500 times the draft is perfect, and I'm like, damn, but the rest of the time it's just work. And I think it's like giving yourself a little time to be away from it, instead of just like gnawing on it. And then just seeing it fresh, reading it out loud is a really good idea. Printing it, like there's some people who just only work on screens, and I don't get that. I think it really is important to put it on paper and sort of redline it yourself, and just imagine yourself as a reader. Like, how is this boring? Then cut it. Even if it's like an important plot point, then it's boring. So forget it. But that's me. I don't know.
I think that's awesome. Sorry.
Take that knife.
I like the way that Sergio phrased the question. Like, what are some of your tricks? One of my tricks is to think of it as play. Like once I've gotten a draft out, I can acknowledge that it's probably got most of my ideas down, but it's also probably in the wrong order. It probably needs some major pruning. Maybe some like clarifying work. And so like one of my tricks when I say I try to make it feel playful is sort of like what Sarah was saying, like the tactile element of printing it out and going at it with a red pen. But for me, I actually like cutting it into strips and
cool.
Like quilting it almost like on the floor. All right, here's this section and this section. What if I move it around? I'm walking among the different sections of an essay.
How the heck did you do that when you had littles? Like they're big now, but how did you do that when you were small?
I've always liked to work that way. Like I use the walls. And my other trick is like workshopping it, like we've been giving it to trusted readers, friends who also need the same favor from me about their work. And I ask them like, what do you think? Where does this need?
No, seriously, like I really want to know, how did you use this physical method when you had very, very small children in your house?
And an 800 square foot apartment.
Yes.
Higher on the wall.
How did you do that? Because I cannot, I've always liked and wanted to do everybody uses the little, what are they called? Index cards. And they do their plot outline. I can't use a plot outline because I can't put index cards anywhere in this house. Or everybody's like, what's that? Oh, let's talk about that. Hey, for my work.
Well, when I did it, when we live in a bigger space now, and I have for the first time my own, like a room of my own, where if I felt like leaving it on the floor and it being my carpet, like my work being my own carpet, I could do that. But before, when they were really little and we had shared space and only 800 square feet to move in, it wasn't going to be a permanent fixture. It would be an exercise I would do while they were in daycare, for example. And then I would clean it up and, like tape it back together, and whatever had revealed itself to me as a new order, I would like set that into place with Scotch tape and then put it on my desk or hang it on the wall or stuff it somewhere.
I love the tactileness of
awesome.
that though. It's so cool. Yeah. It's super cool.
I think apart from, go ahead.
Go ahead, Matthew.
I was just going to say, I think all the tricks are pretty like standard, and like it's things I do as well. In addition to this other eyes and this workshop and this exchange that Emily said, I also have the luxury that my wife is a really good reader. And I think the first person who sees this draft, and again, I think how Emily said, you have everything there, but you have to find like the right order and everything. And it's more of like this flow of consciousness at first. And the like messy or playful part, she says playful, I say messy, because I get a bit stressed by it at first, is seeing how to unweed it all, Mm-hmm. And luckily this person is then like this first reader I have who's very good at seeing what's going on there. Then, like, hey, another reader friend whose work I like, let's change. And then you get this second set of eyes, and you can kind of like collate all of that feedback to find the threads that are repeating in what people are saying.
Is your wife also a writer? Does she write as well?
No, we met doing our masters in London in comparative literature.
Nice.
And so she's a serious reader, you know, and just has a very good feel for all these things. And
nice. Yeah, both of you guys have writer husbands, though, Emily and Sarah. How do you guys deal with the time management of, I need my writing space, you need your writing space, and we have 2 children each? Like how?
Or especially when the kids were younger.
Yeah, when they were little, like now. Now, hooray for school. Yay, school. Yay, soccer.
School.
Go to soccer. Take up violin.
Well, I mean, it's easy now. I have Clem's birthday. She's 15 today. And then I have a 12-year-old.
Happy birthday, Clem.
Yeah.
Yay.
And it's easy. I'm in my garage. It rained and there was some mold, so I couldn't be in it. So I've been in and out of the kitchen table for a while. But it's easier. And when they're young, it's really hard. And I think I grew up in a very traditional patriarchy. And so I kind of deferred and sort of put JT first in ways that maybe the next generation doesn't do. I don't know. Or maybe people who weren't raised how I was don't do. But I think it's hard. And getting out, like I had never written in a coffee shop before, but I started doing that because I had to. I had no place. So that helped. And just they're getting older helped.
Yeah, time is a good solution. Emily, do you guys have like weekly meetings where you're like dividing up the time?
It's definitely is similar to Sarah's family, where our kids are of an age now where they're much more independent. But when they were little, like Matthew's kids, who were still really little, it was challenging for sure. I had to hire a work coach at one point because I was so like despairing about the kind of the imbalance and how I was going to find time given. And because if I had back-to-back babies, they're under 2 years apart. So like one was in diapers when I got unexpectedly pregnant with the other one. And so I hired this work coach who like basically was kind of a therapist for writers, and in particular helped women with families, usually women in academia whose job was on the line, like who really needed to complete a book in order to get tenure. And I didn't quite fit that category, but a little bit. And so her strategies I'll share because she was quite expensive, but worth it at the time.
That sounds great. Thanks. Yeah.
Basically, she showed me a study that said, like, you know, you're just like with like physical, you know, exercise, like a little bit every day. If you just do a little bit of it every day and are consistent with it, your productivity actually, it's better than if you do it in a bingey kind of way once every 2 weeks. Like I had this kind of nostalgia for the writing life I had before kids, which was when I had my own apartment in Harlem and I could just pull an all-nighter and sleep the next day if I wanted. I could be like gloriously unscheduled about it, but really, bingey about it. And I missed that. But she got me to see like, okay, you can't do that anymore. You kind of need to try to get regular sleep. That was sort of a joke, right? But like I wasn't sleeping enough. And yet she said, okay, well, let's look at your schedule. What regular time do you have? And when do you find yourself most alert? And for me, that was the morning. And we were able to ascertain that my kid took like a 45-minute nap at that point in the morning. And she said, well, that's going to be the time that you get writing done. And probably it's only going to be a half hour of work, but you'll be thinking about it even when you're doing the laundry and breastfeeding or making snacks or whatever you're doing, the parenting stuff, because you're so, deliberate about sitting down at your desk every day, even for a little bit, that your mind is going to be paying attention and doing writing and composing and thinking through stuff, even when your body is not. That was her main piece of advice.
That's great advice.
She spent a lot of money to get.
That's so funny. So one of the things, so in our meetups, we always crowdsource this kind of information, like what works for you. And obviously not everybody is going to have a person who naps regularly at the same time when they can go and sit down and work, and or any kind of consistency in their life. But what we were actually talking about today in my Tuesday meetup was the fact that in a corporate job, the reason that it's kind of easier to be a working mom if you have a corporate job than it is to be a writer mom and try to write something is because a corporate job inherently has structure. It is either project-based or hours-based that you have to perform to do the job. So when you take if you're a lawyer or whatever, like you have to put in a certain number of hours or you have to produce the work to be paid for the work. Whereas when you're a writer at home, there's no structure. It's only self-imposed structure. And not many people have the discipline, the self-discipline to say, I am going to make this 1 hour a day, or I am going to write 50 words a day, even if it's like opening the document 5 days a week, whatever. But like the goals that you set yourself or the structure that you set yourself it has to fit into your family life. Like the structure has to fit into your family life. So if it's even like I need to work 10 minutes a day, it won't be at the same time every day. But before I go to bed, I'm going to work 10 minutes, like whenever that is.
I mean,
so
I have to say, my kid never slept. Like,
yeah,
never.
And then you feel bad because you're like, I was supposed to work and I can't, and you don't want to guilt yourself out of productivity.
For all of you out there who have kids like that, because they do exist, because I tried to Ferberize my kid. I tried the sleep lady. I tried everything, and it didn't work. Really, I mean, Parentis really does have these meetups that are so helpful. I wish I had that. I really wish, and now they exist, so you can get the support you need. So please sign up.
I want to ask another. So go ahead, Sarah.
I was just gonna say it doesn't last. It's like a rough time for anybody, and then probably especially when you're trying to be creative. But it's like a finite time. And there's so much you can do to just keep yourself going, even if you're not able to write.
Yeah. Stay creative. Keep your mind going. Get story idea. Write 100,000 story ideas. What were you going to say, Emily?
This is also a really fascinating and interesting time. So if it's not a time where it's possible to be productive with finishing, let's say, a short story or a book for that matter, it could be just a really interesting time to be taking notes, because a lot of that stuff we forget. I remember after giving birth, knowing like, I'm going to forget this. Everybody tells me that there's like a biological reason that I'm going to forget this so that I can maybe do it again. So I better write down everything I remember about it, like the day after it happened. And I asked my husband too, like, what do you remember? What were the idiosyncratic details you remember about what we just went through?
Yeah,
and that wasn't writing exactly, but I used those details later. It was a kind of like note taking.
And additionally, like Alice Munro died today, but she had kids, and she wrote. The reason she wrote, she won a Nobel Prize. Like, it's not like it's like she had kids and she won a Nobel Prize. That's awesome.
and she was a short story writer.
She was a short story writer.
The structure, like the form matched the content of her life. And Grace Paley was the same way. She was a teacher. Like what she was able to do was write short stories. You know, like when her kids were at school at the coffee table. And
that's right. And you write your best. You write the most amazing things with what time you have. And I think that's pretty cool. What were you going to say, Sarah?
No, that's really important. There's so much that I just wanted to like sell my next book. And that time was really special for personal reasons, but also just like if I had slowed down and paid more attention, I think there was a lot to see. And I look back at what I was writing at that time and like the stories I sold, and I was putting all of that stuff in my stories, but I don't remember it now. I'm like, that's weird. And it would have been smart to have written it down
instead of just working it into your stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, life is huge.
It's out there. It's just in the stories. You're going to need a biographer.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, it's a really cool idea to like be like, this is life. I should pay some attention to it, and fun human stuff.
So I have a very we're wrapping up, but I want to ask another heady question. I have all these smart people, and I want to talk about smart things. Emily, you said, I have had to think deliberately as a writer about what to share and who I am writing for and why. I am very curious if all three of you can share with us, if you would like, to tell us, what do you think of those things? What to share? Who are you writing for and why? Emily, you have to start because you already answered this question.
Well, this book that I just put out is about these kind of dark, intersecting polycrisis issues, but from the lens of parenthood. And so there is this memoir line, but I made a very deliberate choice that I wasn't really going to write about my kids very directly. I felt comfortable that I could write about the experience of mothering them, but their lives are their own, and their lives are still, and their identities are still in development. And so I didn't really feel comfortable revealing their personalities or their secrets. They're like on the page. I think that's what I was talking about with that quote, that I just sort of made a decision the way when you look at a crossword puzzle, there's a lot of black, like a lot of black spaces, and the order is made out of the white spaces and the words you fill into them. And if I just made some choices, like there are certain things I didn't want to reveal about my marriage or my family that I just felt like weren't the reader's business. And but I also wanted the reader to know me and understand my deep concern for my kids. And so how could I achieve that degree of intimacy without maybe doing things that to me felt like not quite ethical? That was something I was working through with this book.
I really liked that bit about like exploitative trauma, like exploiting your trauma as opposed to just living through it or using it to fuel your writing. I think that was cool. Sarah?
Like, since my stuff is fiction, I think a lot of what I'm doing in my work is like, are these thoughts I'm having my own? Am I alone in them? And like a lot of what I do, I think, is to communicate with a reader who's like me, who's experienced what I've experienced, and kind of like, we're not alone. So I was just thinking, like, I don't really include my kids, but like A Better World is very much about a marriage, and
a lot of parenting.
There was stuff, and I was like really lucky that my husband was cool with it. I don't know, like he says he's cool with it. I hope he is, but I think he gets it.
It's fiction.
It's fiction, but it's like, and I think I'm lucky he gets it, because it's so much about like that feeling of being alone. Like, I love him, I'm really happy, but like, this is what I was writing about. And I think, that's what I'm doing, is I just like, I like to poke at things, and I like to push them until they pop. And it's like, what's inside of it? This is what I think is inside of it. And so, I handed in the short story that was an adaptation, like, like there's this anthology coming out from this about The Stand, that Stephen King book. And I handed in the short story, and it was going to like the editor. And I was like, I don't like my ending, because the ending felt false. Like the ending was like, and then everyone was happy. And I was like, no, they weren't. And like, I had to go sit down. And I was like, the editor is like Brian Keene. I texted him, and I was like, did that go out yet? He's like, come on. And I was like, just hold on. And like, he gave me like 2 hours. And I was like looking at it, and I was like, I really, like, what drives me is this feeling of that's right. That's true. Like to and for me and whoever reads it to think that's right. And sometimes they hate it. They're furious. They're like, I don't know why you would write something so terrible. And I'm like, you know,
Sorry, that's the world.
to comfort the
Not me.
disturbed and to disturb the comforted, I guess.
Right. I love it.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. Matthew, you had something to say about Alice Munro, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I love you for having all these ideas that are all over the map. They're like me. I'm like, wait, I have an idea.
I think it comes from work meetings, like I do a lot of work meetings on Google Meets, and then you also like chatting to the other
At the same
people
time.
at the same time.
That's so cool.
But yeah, I think the to go with maybe the easier question first would be to say, like, who do you write for? I think that I have a very like specific internal compass that, like, if I'm not getting to what I would think something's supposed to be, I'm still working on it. And like I've had a story that was accepted to like a really big magazine, and I had actually edited since the acceptance because I was annoyed with something. And then it's like, well, how do you broach this topic of like this finished work that somebody has said like this is good, and equate that with this fact that you don't feel like it's right yet? and at first it's like this emotional battle. Do I trust myself? Should I just go with what like this established place is saying is good? Should I poke the bear and be like, ooh, can I change it around a bit, as Sarah was mentioning? So I think maybe you're writing for this internal whatever gesture that's never really quite satisfied and has this like value system. And then of course for your like closest people, like, will they enjoy reading this, or are they going to get something from this? I had a very funny experience that last year I went to the Kenyon Review summer workshop, and I got placed with the writer E.J. Levy, and her course was going to be on autofiction, and I hadn't picked whose course I would be in. Like, people usually say, I would like to be with this writer, I would like to be with that writer. I just didn't pick. And I was like, well, why did you put me with her? Just curious. I was just thinking this, right? And then the first day of the course, she's like, okay, so this is the autofiction course. This for people who write like autofiction. I was like, do I write autofiction? Is this, like about me? And with a lot of the short stories that have gotten published that people read, they ask me like, oh yeah, like, like writing about your childhood, it was like this and like this. It's like, no, I'm not the character in the story.
Yeah, if it's realistic fiction, they make that people make that assumption all the time. It's like, if you set it in reality and it is a gender that's your gender, it's you.
But there is fairness to it. And I think Emily was talking about the crossword puzzle. And I have like a similar feeling about like a pot of stew, like you have all these spices. I've heard this metaphor before, and you're putting them all in the stew, and they're your memories, your how you felt something, characteristics of you or people. But then once they're in the stew, it's a stew. It's not you or these people. And I hope that people understand that, even if like there is a flavor of autofiction. I don't want anyone to be offended and think like, oh, this is how you see me. No, this character is not you.
You guys, we are way, way over, as you can see from the thank you for attending thing. I do want to thank you all for reading, though. Emily,
thank you,
Christina curating this beautiful panel. It's so good. This is the last Pen Parentis Literary Salon until September, but you can always look at our massive archive on it's Pen Parentis. No, it isn't. It's youtube.com/penparentis, and every salon that we have done online is on there, and you can see all the famous people that we have presented who have kids, and you can be amazed, and you can become one of them by writing your own book and sending us an email and saying, hey, I have a great book, you should put me on there. And then Christina will be deluged and she'll be mad at me. No, seriously, you guys, thank you so much for closing out our season. We are very, very, very honored to have all three of you. Thank you for zooming in from Germany and from all over, from Los Angeles, New York. We love this. Sergio said it's the best hour he spent all week. So yay! And also, Christina has something to say.
In September 10th, we'll have our first reading for our next season, and it'll the theme is siblinghood and rivalry. So. Ooh. Please join us then. We have Aida Zayalin, Melanie Conroy Goldman, and Darian Shugi. So please join
It's
us.
going to be awesome. Okay, everybody. Bye. We will see you in September, and sign up for our mailing list so you know when that happens. Bye, everybody.